Is back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes, is going for it.
Oh my God! What a goal! And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello, welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. The MLS season, ladies and gentlemen, seems to be flying by as we are already in match week 6. It's so hard to believe. I feel like just last month we were talking about, this is the shortest offseason in history, and we're already in match week 6. And so we see the Philadelphia Union take on the Columbus Crew this weekend at 6 p.m. at Subaru Park. The Crew are coming into Chester, where they are undefeated on the road with 2 draws against San Jose Earthquakes and the New York Red Bulls, while the Union remain undefeated at home and throughout the MLS season. We'll see if that continues this weekend as they take on the Columbus Crew. Well, returning to the podcast to talk all things Crew is color analyst for the Columbus Crew, Miss Jordan Angeli. Jordan, how are you doing?
I'm good, Todd. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm so thankful that you came back on. It's a pleasure of mine to be able to speak to you because, in my opinion, and I've talked to a lot of commentators and listened to a lot of commentators in MLS. I think you're right up there with one of the best that the league has to offer, and that's just because of the way you describe the action on the field. You know, you see a lot of things that maybe casual fans don't see, and you bring it up, and it really paints a whole big picture, and I really appreciate that. And then, obviously, you and Joe had MLS Assist, and that was a wonderful podcast, and I know it's kind of on a hiatus now, but I think at the beginning of the season, I don't know whose idea it was with the Crew, but they came out with the recap segment that you've been hosting every week. And that's a major credit to them. That's really enjoyable content you guys are putting out there. And so I just want to say bravo for you and for the Crew for producing that.
Okay, well, I feel like that was just so many compliments, and thank you. They don't go unnoticed. I appreciate that. That's my biggest goal is I love this game, and I feel like I was given a perspective of the game that is different than other people's. And that's what makes commentators special, right? Is not to see things the way everybody else sees things or the way somebody else does. So, you guys have really good commentators too, but I really appreciate that. And yeah, the recap has been fun. It was my idea because I've been wanting to do more with digital and have a really good video team who has helped execute that and do a lot of the back end, like editing, grabbing clips, all that type of thing. But yes, it's been fun to just do something different and be silly in moments and to be serious in moments because we can't take this too seriously. It's just a game after all.
Yeah, it's for entertainment, right? And
yeah,
exactly. I'm going back to I think you had Derek Etienne on, and you were talking about goal scoring celebrations and everything, and he was talking about the one celebration. I forget what the celebration was. If Darlington Nagbe scored, and then he scored. I don't even think he did the celebration.
Okay, you know what's crazy? He actually did the celebration. Okay. The TV cameras cut away from him because it was away, and he scored at the last minutes. And I'm not sure if your listeners know how TV broadcasts work, but since it was a away match for the Crew, we were at New York Red Bulls. The director for Red Bulls is really telling the producer which cameras to use. And so after that little goal celebration where he did the ode to BWP, they just cut away. And actually our video guy got Darlington doing his little dance. So I think we're going to have to see it again, Darlington. Come on, you need to score another goal. I'm sure you're thinking maybe not this weekend, but we need to see that Darlington dance again.
Absolutely. Because I was like, you guys can have time that better. You guys were just talking about whenever Darlington scores, and then he scores the upcoming. It is crazy.
I know. I got to start putting more stuff like that into the recap, just speaking it into fruition. Actually, last week I talked about Hani Mukhtar and how he loves a good step over. Yeah, because everybody knows that. And this week I'm going to show Jonathan Mensah just defending him when I think he did 6 step overs. I'm not kidding. In one play, just crazy legs, but Mensah defended him really well. So maybe I am kind of speaking things into existence.
I think you are. I think you are. Let's, like you said, let's hope not for Philadelphia Union's sake. But we'll talk about that game here in a little bit later. You brought up Hani Mukhtar. As Philly fans may or may not know, Columbus took on Nashville, which ended in a 1-0 defeat for the Crew. I think that was just an unfortunate moment in the game where it was one slip by Pedro Santos, which allowed for a free header. And that's all Nashville needed to win this game 1-0. And, that's 4 straight games, I believe it is, now that the Crew have had to play from behind. And when you're playing against a team like Nashville, they sit so deep in that low block, they make it impossible to score. And I go back to the game against Nashville in the playoffs where they scored first, and Philly had to fight their way back, and they eventually got a goal off of a corner kick, I believe it was. And you guys had a ton of chances off corners. You guys were taking shots from outside the box because, once I got that goal, they were not going to let you guys play through the middle. You guys had to go out wide, cross the ball in, or hope that you can get something from a corner. And I know you guys were close a couple times. Lucas Zelarayan was close with a free kick, but just nothing would go in for you guys. So, I've got to imagine just still looking back at that game, it's got to be frustrating.
Do you guys play Nashville this year?
We do.
Do you play them this year?
Yeah, we opened them in their brand new stadium.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, that might be they might open up a little bit more, but I think a lot of people in the East are happy Nashville is no longer in the Eastern Conference because they can just be a pest to play against. They know, Gary Smith knows how to get his team in a good defensive structure. They work on that every single day, and it shows when it comes to game time. I thought it was pretty cool too. I don't know if you caught any of the Champions League games, but the Manchester City game yesterday was very similar. It was Diego Simeone's Atletico Madrid in a almost 5-5. It was a 5-5-0 block. And Kevin De Bruyne after the game was saying, it's like playing handball. You're just swinging it around the perimeter. I've never played handball, so I didn't know, but I loved the way that he described that because it was such a look too at what the Crew were trying to break down. It is difficult. Even the best of teams, the best team in the world, you can't break that down very easily. And so I think the Crew had a lot of good moments, especially brave moments, trying to play through the center of the box, zone 14 particular, at the top of the box to try to make through there. They were brave in those moments, but also, you get one chance against a team like that. And they actually got 2, I think. I think they got the Miguel Berry chance, and I think Matan had a chance a little bit later. And you have to execute, and it's a game of moments just like that. And so I think that you take a lot of good things. If you're a Crew fan, you take a lot of good things out of that, and it doesn't slow your roll at all. Like confidence in how the team can perform, especially going forward or even defending. Not like they were challenged defensively, not like Philly's going to challenge them defensively. But there's a lot of good things you can still take out of that game.
I was going to ask you that. I mean, is this a game that you just throw out because not many teams play a good low block like Nashville? But you just said it, there's a lot of good things you can take out of that game. But I didn't mention that Columbus, they'd conceded the first goal in the last 4 games, which they're 1 win, 2 draws, and 1 loss in that stretch. Last year, looking at it, they conceded in the first they conceded in 5 straight games in a stretch, I believe, from like July that lasted into August. And they were 0-5 during that stretch. Is this something that Crew fans should be concerned about, that they have a tendency to concede first a lot at times last year, and now it's happened again this season?
I don't feel like this season it feels the same that it did last year. Because the game against Red Bulls, that first goal that they gave up was in the 86th minute. It was really late in the game. So really good defensively. This goal was scored, but you said it right off the bat. It was a mistake that rarely happens. Pedro Santos slips and Alex Mule is open at the back post. It's not like the breakdowns that were happening last year where the team just got a little too stretched centrally in the midfield and then they were broken apart. So is it something that they want to change? I would think yes, absolutely. They don't want to concede first in every single game, but I wouldn't say that there's any kind of, not that there was panic last year, but there was a real concern about the way that they were starting games, maybe too energetic, too willing to stretch themselves out. There's none of those feelings this year because they've really been playing rather well when you think about the first 5 games of season.
You guys had Champions League last year that you were focusing on. that takes a wear and tear, and especially your second draw, you guys had to go down to Mexico for that. So the first series of games you played in the Champions League, okay, everybody expected the Crew to win, but then when you go down, I believe it was Monterrey, it's a lot different than
it's different, yeah. And that stretch that you just talked about in the middle of the Crew lost 6 in a row, which name another team in MLS who loses that many. I mean, Miami might be there this year, but
Cincinnati.
To lose 6 in a row is a very difficult thing, and it doesn't happen very often. But the Crew, last year during that stretch, we had a different starting lineup by 4 or 5 players each game in that series. We were without Artur a lot. We were without Jonathan Mensah. We were without Josh Williams. We were without a starting left back. Everything structurally for this team was changing game in and game out. It's really hard. I mean, you guys probably are the best. Last year, it might have been New England, who was solid throughout the year, no injuries. Just you knew who they were going to roll out every year. Philadelphia is another team that I think of when it's like, we know who they're going to roll out. Maybe a change, maybe 2, but really this is the squad, and that cohesion that you can build when the team is the same week in and week out is a difference maker in this league. It really is.
Majority of the roster for the Union, they've been here for 4 years, and that goes a long way. When you see teams year after year is just rebuilding, letting go of players, it takes a lot to build that within. And so I think I say it all the time, people look, oh, well, they might not know any players on the Union, but really the whole team's the star because they've all been here together. They know the system that Jim Curtin wants a team to play, the 4-4-2 diamond. So they all know their roles. They know what it takes to win. They're okay with not having possession of the ball because when they get their chance on the counterattack, more times than not, they're going to make you pay. But let's focus on Columbus defensively. Like you mentioned, just a lot of changes last year for the Crew, and it's kind of been that way this year because you guys bring in a new center back this year in Milos Degenek. I hope I'm saying that right, from Red Star Belgrade and Serbia. Milos had started the first 5 games of the season with regular center back partner to Joseph Mensah, Josh Williams, dealing with injuries to start the 2022 season. And when you look at the first 5 games last year in MLS play for the Crew, they were 3-2 with 2 clean sheets against Philly and Montreal. And, I know the season started earlier. We were talking about CCL play for the Crew. That's not the case this year, where the Crew are 2 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss so far this season with only 1 clean sheet, and they've conceded 6 goals so far this season. Would you say there are issues primarily because there's a completely new back line compared to last season? And I know we're talking about Pedro Santos here in a minute, but what are your thoughts on that?
That's interesting. I haven't thought about that as much as you just put the thought into it, which I think is nice. Like it makes me question things in a different way, and questioning things is always good. Milos Degenek, he is so much experience, and I do think that him and Mensah are a good partnership together. I think that just for allowing Milos to have a little bit of to kind of wane himself into this club, he didn't have that opportunity because Josh Williams got hurt in the last game of preseason. But now you have 3 really quality center backs. And I think that going through this season, there might be opportunities where Caleb Porter executes a 3-back system with Pedro Santos and Steven Moreira as wingbacks, and having a little bit of fluidity in his approach to games, I think is something that he's talked about and he is excited about. But now you're into, 5 weeks a season that has flown by, and haven't really gotten to train that because Josh hasn't been in training. So we'll see if that ends up happening at all this season. But what I like about the back line, I do think Milos and Jonah have been doing really well next to each other. I love Pedro Santos at outside back. I really do. And the reason why is he is so good creatively. And it almost felt like there were too many options for him when he was at the winger position. Now everything is in front of him. He can see where Lucas is at all times. They have a great connection. He knows where the center forward is. Everything is in front of him. So he can play that way and join the attack at the right time. I think his timing in doing that has improved. He has shown throughout, this is my 3rd year with the Crew, throughout that time, he is willing to do the defensive work. So you put him there where he's already at a better position to defend instead of always chasing back and tackling. I think it's been great. And I was a little worried about that because I liked Milton Valenzuela. I thought he was a great left back, was hoping it would work out. When it didn't work out, Pedro slides in and, okay, can he be consistent? And I think he's proven that he can be consistent. On the other side, Steven Herrera is fun. You guys, the Union, we played the Union. The last game was in July, I want to say, or when was it? Right. Yeah. I know it was at,
we played 3 times
Philly
last
and
season.
You guys beat us. So I do remember that. But Steven Herrera wasn't on the team. And what he adds to this team is, I actually spoke with him last week. He's played in France before. And the big difference, he said, from that league and coming here is it's way more physical, but he's embraced it in a way. He loves to get forward. He loves to attack. And you'll see him go on a run, on a dribble. A lot of the times he'll come inside and make through a dribbling pattern. And it is so fun to watch. So I actually like our back line. And when you think about it, Todd, the one goal we've given up is this last game in the run of play. Every other goal has been a penalty kick off of a set piece. So that's the emphasis, as a unit defensively from Aloy Room all the way to the front. I feel like everyone's defending really well and they're understanding the gaps to clog and how to shift together as a unit. But it needed to get better on set pieces. And there was an improvement, at least against Nashville. And well, they didn't give up that many because Nashville didn't come out from the parking lot. But
you're right.
Yeah, there has to be. I mean, if you're going to get a result against the Union, though, you have to be good on set pieces because you guys have some incredible target,
both defensively and offensively for the Union. It's something I brought up to Jim Curtin a couple of weeks ago. Just ever since they brought in Frank Leich, their set piece coach, the Union, I think Jim said, had scored the most set pieces in the league since 2020 or 2021. I forget exactly what he said. So I mean, obviously something's working there. And he said
we need another one of those graphics that they did, right? Like the points graphics. We need one of those.
Exactly. We absolutely do. They're so helpful and everybody loves looking at that stuff.
It was nice.
It was extremely nice. Got to get somebody in the Union's front office to come up with another graph for us. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting hearing Jim say, yeah, you're right. We're attacking set pieces a lot better, but we're also defending them with a mix of a hybrid, man marking, and a zonal system. He's like,
I noticed that. Yeah.
It's helped big time. And so I don't think it's a coincidence ever since Frank came into the club in 2020 that the Union have got better in that department. So hopefully they can stay defensively sound against Columbus this week.
And I think zone, personally, I was a zoner in a defensive set piece structure. So I like a mixture of a zone and man marking. I think if you go straight man marking, it's so much pressure on those individual battles. If you throw in a couple of zones in there, I think 2, maybe 3 players. I think you guys play 4, like around the top of the 6. I think there's 4 players, which is what I used to play in. There's so much freedom in those players, especially when you have people who are good in the air and willing to go get the ball. If you have those types of people, zone is perfect because you just let Glesnes go, Elliott go, win the ball. If it's in your zone, you're responsible. And so it takes us a slight pressure off of those man-to-man marks, which I like. It kind of distributes it a little bit better, I think, personally.
Exactly. And look, Union fans now are going to pay attention to this weekend because this is what I'm saying. Jordan picked out things that fans don't normally think about. But let's go ahead and flip from defense to offense. Looking at Jalcy Zardes and Miguel Berry, they both combined for 1 goal so far in 5 matches for the Crew this season. And look, there's no denying that Columbus have struggled with their 2 center forwards this season. And when you look at Columbus's 10 goals this season, 4 of those came from Lucas Celarayan, where there was a rumor, I believe, a month or so ago that Columbus would be open to selling or trading Jalcy if it's the right deal in place. And with only 3 strikers on the roster, I think it's a position that the Crew wouldn't sell him unless they bring in another striker to replace him if they already have something lined up. But would you say the striker group is the weakest position right now on this team, or would you say, it's nothing to worry about yet?
In general, I think the striker position is the most fragile position in football because a lot of it is based off of confidence. And the thing that the reason I think early on in the year, Miguel Berry was on a heater when it came to the end of last year, and the Crew missed out on the playoffs by 1 point. we talk about that 6-game loss. If you get a draw in the mix of that, you're in the playoffs. And Miguel Berry had, I want to say 4 goals in 5 games to end the season. And then he scores the first game. He was with the team all preseason, scores the first game of the season, the first goal of 2022, confident. And then it's just a different animal when you're not new to the league and teams know how to mark you a little bit better. They know your movement patterns, all that stuff. They can scout you. And I think teams have been a little bit more conscious of who Miguel Berry is. And so Jassy had been performing. He came in versus San Jose, scored a goal in that one. That ends up being a 3-3 draw. So he had contributed in the first few games, but this is what I mean, confidence. They only had 1 shot on goal in like 200 minutes between the two of them over the last few, before this last game against Nashville. So when you're talking about strikers, their confidence, yes, comes in training, but it really comes from getting themselves in dangerous positions and putting the ball in the back of the net. And it's a fragile position. I don't think it's now I'm not going to say it's the weakest, because if you look at both of them, I think a lot of teams would take them. I think teams would take Jassy. I think teams would take Miguel. It's just, can the Crew continue to provide opportunities for them, which they have proven that they will. I think that there's goals there, and it's just going to come. It's just a fragile position. And a lot of it is on the balance of, okay, how confident am I going into this? And I'm not saying they're not confident. I just know as a forward, sometimes when you're not scoring, you tend to push the game a little bit too much and try to do too many, do things that are uncharacteristic for you, which makes it actually harder to score, instead of just playing your game and making it easy and doing the things that come natural to you.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because Union fans, absolutely, not all of them, but a lot of them despise Kasper Schubelko. And, he would be inconsistent last year. I'm not afraid to admit that. And he would drop deep to collect the ball. He would go out wide where he needed to be centrally, because, he's a tall body. I think he's like 6'4". You got to send those crosses into him. But he would go anywhere on the field just to get involved in the attack, to try to get involved some way, because, he had a couple chances, couldn't put in the back of the net. And you're right, your confidence starts to shrink and everything. So you got to look ways to up your game and everything and get involved into the attack. And yeah, I know Union fans don't want to give him credit for the goal he scored against New York City in the Eastern Conference, but it was 100% because of the run that he made. And I know it was an own goal by New York City, but you're right. Strikers go through these. Yeah, exactly. It's a goal, right? And put the Union up 1-0.
Yeah. I really like, and it looks different for you guys this year, a little slightly with your forwards, and now you have a lot of forwards.
Yeah, I know.
Which is an interesting thing, and probably good to have that competition. But I've always thought that the way that your forwards move and aren't afraid to get into the channel and to stretch the back line, because whether it's Schubelko last year or Santos this year or Kranza this year, when they pop up into that space, then the center back is like, okay, well, I'm going to give that to you, but I have to think about, all right, are the wingers tucking in? There's just decision-making that has to happen so quickly with the movement that you guys have, that type of movement by 2 front runners, I wouldn't be too afraid of. I would almost welcome it a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. But let's go ahead and talk about this weekend's game between the Union and the Crew. And these games always get me excited between these two teams. The Crew, they lead the series 15 wins, 4 draws, 11 losses, while the Union are unbeaten in the last 3 games versus the Crew, outscoring them 4-0, with the most recent game a 3-0 victory for the Union that saw Kai Wagner get a red card in this game. Jack Elliott, Ali Bedoya, and Leon Flock all got on the goal-scoring sheet. This is a game where, Columbus, I believe, had a penalty saved, I want to believe, or they had a really good chance. It was one of those. It was so long ago. Try to go back to that. I can't remember.
All I remember about that game is Montero. Was it Montero or Martinez got a red card and then it got pulled back?
Now I'm trying to think. Yeah. I wouldn't put it past Jose, right?
They went to VAR and then they brought which was the right call. It shouldn't have been a red card. But it's always hard for the Crew to play. I think it's hard for a lot of teams to play with you guys at home. But you guys make it a difficult place to play. So yeah, this should be an interesting one. What do you like about the matchup? You said you like playing the Crew. So what is it? Is it because it always seems to be a feisty game when these
the one thing that I always like focus on and everything is the midfield battle. I think Darlington Nagbe is one of the best passers of the ball in the league. You guys can argue that he is the best passer of the ball in the league. So, I mean, to try to dispossess him off of the ball, to try to throw him off his game, that's really, really hard to do. You look at what Derek Ethion's doing this season, having a career year for the Crew. I think that's great for Crew fans to see him get into his form and to see Kai Wagner and Nate Harriel both get tested by your two wingers. That's just going to improve their game. And you guys have two good wingers that are playing with a lot of confidence this season. So I think that's only going to help Kai Wagner and Nate Harriel will get better. And it'll be interesting to see what the Union do against Lucas Zelarayan. You know, the Union in the past, they've struggled against 10s. They did a good job keeping Emmanuel Reynoso in check when they played against Minnesota the first game of the season. But, you know, Lucas Zelarayan, I think, is a little bit of a different player than Emmanuel. And so it'll be interesting this week to see what they do to keep Lucas in check.
Yeah, it really is a midfield battle because there's an overload either way. You know, either the diamond overloads the three centrally for the Crew, or the Crew utilize some of their width and try to bring and overload that channel with either bringing a winger inside or popping even Giassi Zardes or Miguel Berry, whoever is up top, into that space next to Martinez, because I think Jose Martinez is incredible. What a wild card. I mean, he is a wildcat and a half, but he's not very good having to manage the space next to him because it's difficult when you're that one lone person. It's a difficult space to manage. So if I were the Crew, that would be the space that I would look to try to occupy, either with Etienne coming inside an attack and Zelarayan kind of them splitting him, because then you have decisions to make. Does Bedoya come all the way back down and flank him and sit next to him to protect the space? Or does he stay, which you guys sometimes cheat and then you transition really well.
They do.
Which is the benefit of your system. If they could not have, if Philly doesn't, I mean, I can't remember what the stats were from the game over the weekend in Charlotte. I think you guys had the ball for like 22%.
Yeah, it was really low.
It was really low. I couldn't believe the number, which I think is actually smarter against a team who is new and doesn't really know how they fully function yet. Jim Curtin is a smart coach. So giving them the ball. So if they give the Crew the ball, it's a different animal than the last game, just structurally, how the Crew play, how well they know each other. But if the Union can sit back and occupy that space in front of their back line, it'll prove to be difficult to break down. You guys just are so good in transition. I almost call it like a forecheck. Like you'll just play the ball through, try to target a forward. But if it doesn't hit a forward, or if it doesn't hit an oncoming outside back, or one of those diamond players on the outside, you just throw numbers forward and press and win it back like a forecheck in hockey, which is smart and helps you guys. You're really good at it.
And we talked about the continuity with this group where most of these players have been with each other for 4 years. So, I mean, that goes such a long way. And look, the first goal that the Union scored against Charlotte was a long ball from Wagner into the channel to Sergio Santos, beats his guy with pace, and then one touch pass and Julian Crown's a finish. I mean, that's a typical Union goal, Jim Curtin called it. And, yeah, I mean, I don't see why we won't see that against Columbus this weekend. Just keep playing these balls out to the channel. Let Sergio Santos, Mikel Ua, who apparently Jim Curtin said on the radio in Philly today that Mikel's going to be unleashed.
Ooh, that's some good info for me. Thanks, Jim.
that should make Union fans happy, unless he's playing mind games, because he did say last week in the press conference, he's like, oh, when you have a player of his ability where he's one of our best players, it's always tempting to start him. So people are like, is he going to start? He comes off the bench, but I don't know. Jim seemed pretty confident that he's going to get the start against Columbus this week. So that should make Union fans very, very happy. But look, it's been 6 years since the Crew have last scored in Subaru Park. It's a long time, and I know a lot has changed in that time.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. And don't give Lucas a free kick.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll get to my keys, and that's my number one, because the Union on social media, they have been like blasting this all day on social media, saying how they went over 4,000 minutes without conceding a goal outside the 18. And I'm like, you guys are hyping this up way too much, because if there's any player you don't want that coming into Subaru Park this weekend, it's Lucas Zellerine. He has 3 goals outside the 18. One of them a direct free kick. Like, why would you guys be talking about this in existence? I'm sure Jim and his coaching staff and players are aware of that. They're probably not, hyping up that stat too much, but it's like, you guys should not be talking about this on social media with Lucas Zellerine coming into Subaru Park.
I have never seen somebody be able to do what Lucas can do in real life, right? You see those things from afar, but honestly, every time, actually, Federico Higuain was in with us in the booth this week and for his retirement ceremony, and he was talking. I asked him about Lucas, and he said he's like 70-80%. If he gets a free kick, he's making it 70 or 80% of the time. And it's true. It's absolutely ridiculous. He does love to operate in those like late spaces at the top of the box. So yeah, maybe the Union are trying to just create a wall with their words outside the box that no ball can go through.
They cannot give up any fouls in dangerous areas, because Lucas was so close to scoring. I couldn't believe that he missed in the second half. Joe Willis was absolutely beat. It just inches away from hitting that top corner. And it's like
at the 18, he can dip a ball up and over a wall with players who are 6'4" at the 18. That is a unbelievably difficult talent. It's so hard to even do that with more space, let alone littler space.
Exactly. And that's why I think you have one of the best jobs. It's one thing watching it from TV, but being there in person, seeing this every single week, like, it doesn't get any better than that. But I'll just go ahead and talk about my other keys. So number one, like I said, don't give away dangerous free kicks to Lucas Zellerine. It's going to be really difficult, I think, for the Union not to do that. 2, you got to contain Derek Etienne. He's having a career year this year, 2 goals, 2 assists with the Crew. I think he had 4 assists last year, something like that with the Crew. So, he's a player that can change a game with his pace. And I was a little bit surprised he's not crossing the ball as much as I thought he was looking at the stats. But, I think his game's got a lot better with the finishing and just picking out his teammates. Maybe not so much just crossing a ball, but playing these 1-2s and everything, and just going at defenders 1v1. So just containing him, I think that's going to be important for the Union this weekend. And we talked about the battle in the midfield. Just how can the Union handle the pressure in the midfield? Just looking at it, Columbus, they pressured teams a total of 682 times this season, with 304 of those coming in the midfield. And they've also put in 39 tackles on the midfield, their most dominant area of the field. So I think those are going to be 3 key areas that Union fans should pay attention to this weekend. What are you looking forward to in this game?
Those are great keys, and I think you broke that down really well. I'm looking forward to a performance. I think the Crew are going to have a lot of the ball, a lot. I don't think the Union are going to care to have the ball. And I think that what happened over the weekend might be helpful against the Nashville squad in this Philly team, knowing that you can be confident trying to break a team down. But I think for the Crew, they have to manage transition moments really well and make sure that their rest defense is in a place where they're aware of where the threat can come from the Union. I would say the other key is, you mentioned that goal that was just scored against Charlotte. It was Jim Curtin called it a typical Union goal. Well, that's something that the Crew have to decide. Okay, if we're going to go press and if we're not going to press, the back line, then the threat is over top. And so where do they set their line of confrontation? How are they pressing? Is a little bit higher of a press to put those center backs under pressure, deeper on the field, as opposed to in the middle of the pitch. I think that will be interesting. And then, gosh, I think this will be a good one. Yeah, I mentioned Martinez and Zellerine. I think that'll be a fun matchup to see how those two work against one another. And I'm going to tell you right now, I do think Jose Martinez will give a free kick away to Lucas Zellerine at the top of the box, because if you've watched him for the last 2 years, you know that that's probably going to happen. And then I'm excited to see your front runners. Say his name again.
Mikael Ua.
Ua. I got to get that down. I've got a few more days before I say it. Ua, if he does get the start, what does that look like? Is it with Carranza? What is the partnership? How do they work off of each other? Because there has to be a real fluidity with the front runners in Philly's system. And has that been established? And how much of those like growing pains are we going to see? Maybe none at all. I don't know, but it should be a good battle. And I think at the end, I hope the Crew get a goal, because what'd you say? It's been 6 games at Subaru Park. The Crew haven't gotten a goal.
Yeah, it's been a long time for Crew fans. So what a perfect weekend for them to get that. And one thing, too, so we're recording this podcast on Wednesday night. So Jim Curtin's press conferences are always on Thursday afternoon. So we'll get an injury update on Ale Bedoya, who missed last game with knee tightness. Sergio Santos had to leave the game. Jim was hoping that it would just be cramps, but you never know. He's an injury-prone player, so it could be pulled hamstring, pulled quad, who knows? So hopefully it was just cramps. And like you said earlier, we have 4 strikers. So to be down to 3, that's not terrible, because it's something that Union fans have been crying for the last couple of years, that they have depth in the striker position. And yeah, we finally have it this season. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully the Union get good news on both of those injuries. But you did ask me too, what else do I like about this matchup is I hate teams that come into Subaru Park and sit deep. And Columbus, I don't think they're going to do that this weekend.
No, I don't think so. They might at moments, because Philly doesn't like to have the ball. They like transitioning. So I think there will be moments where that will be, but I think this game will have a lot more, it'll be more back and forth than what they saw against Charlotte over the weekend. I didn't watch the entirety of that game just because Charlotte plays in such a different system that it was like, that's not how the Crew are going to try to break down Philly. I will say one last thing before I'm out of here. Harriel. It amazes me just the number of players that come through the system and can just slot right in. He is a stud. I think he's very good, and he will be not only, I don't know what it will look like this season for him. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. He might be in the lineup or not, but I think that there's a lot of upside to him. And it is incredible to me what the Union Academy has done to bring so many players from the Academy into the first team. I mean, there's a handful of other ones that we could talk about, but he's just getting some minutes here, and I've been really impressed with him so far.
Love to hear it. Not just Union fans giving Nate credit, but people around MLS giving credit as well. But Jordan, it's been a blast talking Columbus Crew Philadelphia Union with you. And for fans of the show, fans of MLS, if they're not following you on social media, where can they find you on social media?
My handle on Twitter and Instagram is @Angeli. My last name and first name. My last name starts with AN. My first name ends with AN. So I just smushed them together. It's like my Brazilian name, Angeli.
I love that.
And there we are. So you can follow me along.
Absolutely. Great follow. You guys definitely will not regret it. And, if you guys, when we go to Columbus, because I live in Maryland, so I never get to hear Danny and JP in the booth. So I always hear the away team's commentators, and I'm always at the home games. So it's like, I like everybody says they're great guys. I've heard JP a couple times and never heard Danny call a game. So I always hear.
Oh, he's so good. I really like him. I love listening to your brother. I mean, I love JP too, because I've listened to JP forever. But Danny is amazing. You got to get him on the podcast sometime.
I should. People have told me that. And so I know he's been on a couple others. So, what's one more Union podcast for him to come on to, right? But for fans that aren't following the podcast, follow on Twitter @FreeKickPod, Instagram, and Facebook, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. And let's hope we get a great, entertaining game, hopefully. Jose Martinez doesn't give away that free kick outside the 18, because if he does, you have a feeling that we're going to see Lucas add to goal number 5 this season for the Columbus Crew. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is The Free Kick Podcast.